The stars had never seemed so cold to Admiral Park Do-yoon as they did on the night he received his orders. He stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station, watching alien ships drift past like glowing fish in a dark ocean. Behind him, the laughter of Velthari officers echoed through the hall. They were celebrating another successful joint exercise where human ships had been pushed to the back of every formation. Do-yoon kept his face calm. He had learned to do that very well over the past 30 years. "Admiral Park," a deep voice called out. "Come, join us for a drink. Your people fought adequately today." Do-yoon turned and smiled at Commander Rothax, a Velthari officer with scales the color of dried blood. "Thank you, Commander, but I must review our performance reports. We have much to learn from our allies." Rothax laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "Always so humble, you humans? Perhaps that is why the Concord tolerates your presence." Do-yoon bowed his head slightly and walked away. His smile never changed. But behind his eyes, he was counting. Counting the guards at each doorway. Counting the response time of the station's defense systems. Counting the weaknesses that Rothax would never think to hide from such a humble species. This was the way of humanity in the galaxy. For 100 years, they had smiled and bowed and learned. Far across the stars, on a planet called New Sol, a young captain named Choi Yoonji was loading cargo onto her freighter. The boxes were marked as agricultural equipment. Inside them were sensor arrays capable of mapping an entire star system in hours. "Captain Choi," her first officer said quietly, "the port authority is asking questions about our destination." Yoonji wiped sweat from her forehead and shrugged. "Tell them we are delivering farming tools to the outer colonies. Boring work for boring people." The first officer nodded and walked away. Yoonji watched him go, then looked up at the night sky. Somewhere up there, her uncle served on Admiral Park's staff. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was watching humanity and seeing exactly what humanity wanted them to see. Nothing threatening, nothing special. Just another young species learning its place. Ambassador Kim Yuna understood this game better than anyone. She had spent 40 years playing it. Now she sat in the grand hall of the Galactic Concord, listening to alien representatives argue about trade routes and territory disputes. Humanity's seat was in the back corner, far from the center where real decisions were made. "The human delegation wishes to speak," Yuna said, raising her hand. The chamber fell silent. A few representatives looked annoyed at the interruption. "Ambassador Kim," the Concord speaker said with tired patience, "the floor recognizes humanity. Please be brief." Yuna stood and bowed. "Thank you, Speaker. Earth wishes only to express gratitude for the Concord's continued guidance. We ask nothing. We demand nothing. We simply thank our elder species for their wisdom." She sat down. Around the chamber, aliens nodded with approval. Such a polite species. Such a grateful species. So unlike the aggressive races that had caused problems in the past. No one noticed that Yuna's assistant had spent the entire session recording every delegate's conversations through a device hidden in his pen. No one noticed that the gift Yuna had presented to the speaker last month contained a listening device that fed directly to Earth's intelligence network. No one ever noticed anything about the humans. General Lee Jie liked it that way. She stood in a forest on Earth, watching 500 young soldiers crawl through mud and rain. The official name of this program was Wilderness Survival Training. The unofficial name was something else entirely. "Move faster," she shouted. "The enemy will not wait for you to catch your breath." A young soldier stumbled and fell. Jie walked over and pulled him to his feet. "What enemy, General?" the soldier asked, gasping for air. "We are at peace with the galaxy." Jie looked at him for a long moment. Then she leaned close and spoke quietly. "We are at peace because we choose to be. We stay weak because we choose to appear weak. But choices can change, soldier. And when they do, you will be ready." The soldier's eyes widened with understanding. He nodded once and ran to catch up with his unit. GA watched him go. 2 million soldiers had passed through her programs over the past 20 years. 2 million humans who knew how to fight a war that the galaxy had never seen. 2 million weapons hidden in plain sight. In the shipyards of Mars, engineer Kang Mirai examined blueprints that officially did not exist. The ship they described was 3 times larger than anything humanity had ever built. Its weapon systems were based on technology that humans had supposedly never developed. "How long until completion?" asked the shipyard director. 10 more years, Mirai said. "But only if we continue building it in pieces. The moment we assemble it, someone will notice." "And if they notice?" Mirai smiled. "They won't. The galaxy thinks we are building cargo ships and passenger transports. They see what they expect to see." This was the great truth that humanity had discovered. The galaxy was old and tired and arrogant. Its species had fought their wars long ago and settled into comfortable routines. They had rules and systems and expectations. They expected young species to be weak. They expected newcomers to be grateful. They expected humanity to know its place. And humanity played along perfectly. For 100 years, they smiled at insults. They bowed after defeats. They signed unfair treaties and thanked their masters for the privilege. But behind every smile was a memory. Behind every bow was a calculation. Behind every unfair treaty was a lesson learned and filed away for future use. Admiral Park Do-hyun returned to his quarters that night and opened a secure channel to Earth. On his screen appeared the face of President Yoon Seo-jin, leader of the United Earth government. "Admiral," she said, "your report?" "The Valkyrie Defense Network has 17 blind spots," Do-hyun said. "Their command structure relies on 3 central stations. Their officers are overconfident and poorly trained for close combat." The president nodded. "And their opinion of humanity?" Do-hyun allowed himself a small, cold smile. "They think we are harmless, Madam President. They think we are weak. They think we will smile and bow forever." "Good," President Yoon said. "Let them keep thinking that." She ended the transmission. Do-hyun turned off his screen and looked out at the stars once more. Somewhere out there, Captain Choi was mapping enemy territory. Somewhere out there, General Lee was training soldiers for a war that might never come. Somewhere out there, Ambassador Kim was stealing secrets in plain sight. And somewhere out there, the galaxy slept peacefully, never knowing that humanity was not learning to be part of their civilization. Humanity was learning how to end it. The quiet century continued. Humanity smiled and waited. The galaxy watched and saw nothing. That was exactly how humanity wanted it. The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning. President Yoon Seo-jin read it 3 times, hoping the words would change. They did not. "By decree of the Galactic Concord," the message said, "the species known as humanity is ordered to relocate from its current territories. The Valkyrie Dominion requires these sectors for expansion. Humanity will vacate 12 worlds within 5 standard years. Failure to comply will result in enforcement action." Yoon set down the document and looked at Foreign Minister Kang Mirai, who sat across from her desk with a pale face. 12 worlds, Yoon said quietly. 40 billion people. They want us to abandon everything we have built. "They cannot be serious," Mirai replied. "This violates every principle the Concord claims to stand for. They are entirely serious." Yoon stood and walked to her window. Outside, the city of Geneva sparkled in the morning light. Children walked to school. Workers hurried to their jobs. None of them knew that their entire civilization had just been told to disappear. The Concord has ruled. They expect us to obey. For the next 2 years, Humanity tried everything. They requested extensions. Denied. They proposed alternative territories far from Valkyrie space. Rejected. They appealed to the Concord's founding documents, which promised sovereignty to all member species. The appeal was ignored without explanation. Ambassador Kim Yuna, aged 10 years in those 24 months. She traveled to every world that might offer support. She called in every favor humanity had earned in a century of patient diplomacy. She begged, she argued, she pleaded. Nothing worked. They do not see us as equals, Yuna reported to the president in their final meeting before the disaster. They see us as furniture to be moved when it becomes inconvenient. Then we must make them see us differently, Yoon replied. But before humanity could act, the Valkyrie acted first. Captain Choi Yoonji was visiting her family on New Seoul when the ships appeared. She had taken leave for the first time in 3 years to attend her niece's birthday celebration. The little girl had just turned 7. She had her mother's eyes and her grandmother's laugh. Yoonji was helping to hang decorations when the sky turned red. Attention! Human residents. A cold voice announced from speakers across the city. Valkyrie peacekeeping forces have arrived to assist with your relocation. Please remain calm and follow all instructions. Yoonji ran outside. Massive warships hung in the sky like storm clouds made of metal. Smaller vessels descended toward the city center, their weapons already glowing with charged energy. This is wrong, her brother said, joining her on the street. The deadline is still 2 years away. They do not care about deadlines, Eunji replied. She grabbed his arm. We need to get the family out of the city, now. They never had the chance. The Valkyrie called it a response to civil unrest. Later, they would claim that human protesters had attacked their peacekeepers. They would show edited footage of rocks being thrown, of angry crowds refusing to disperse. They would not show what happened next. Admiral Park Do-yeon was on Earth when he received the transmission from New Seoul. At first, he thought the video was fake. It had to be fake. The things he was seeing could not be real, but they were real. Valkyrie ships firing into civilian neighborhoods. Buildings collapsing into dust. Families running through streets that had become rivers of fire. Children screaming for parents they would never find. The bombardment lasted 6 hours. When it ended, 18 million humans were dead. Among them was Park's daughter, Himin. She had moved to New Seoul 5 years ago to work as a teacher. She had sent her father a message just that morning, complaining about the Valkyrie ships, blocking her view of the sunrise. Park watched the destruction footage until he had memorized every frame. Then he turned it off and sat in silence for a very long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and cold as deep space. Get me the president. The Galactic Concord released an official statement 3 days later. They expressed regret at the unfortunate escalation of tensions. They reminded humanity that compliance with relocation orders would prevent future incidents. They offered counseling resources for those affected by the disturbance. They did not apologize. They did not punish the Valkyrie. They did not even acknowledge that a massacre had occurred. General Lee Ji-ye read the statement in her office on Mars. When she finished, she picked up her chair and threw it through her window. The glass shattered into 1,000 pieces that floated slowly in the low gravity. Her aide rushed in. General, are you injured? No, Lee said. Her hands were shaking. But someone will be. On Earth, the streets filled with mourners. Billions of humans who had spent a century being patient, being polite, being everything the galaxy asked them to be, now stood in silence holding pictures of the dead. President Yoon Seo-jin walked among them. She had visited 17 memorial sites in 3 days. She had hugged thousands of crying strangers. She had listened to stories of sons and daughters and parents who had been alive one moment and gone the next dot. Now she stood before the United Earth Assembly, looking out at representatives from every human world. The chamber was silent. No one knew what to say. Yoon began to speak. 100 years ago, we reached the stars and found that we were not alone. We found a galaxy full of ancient species who had built wonders we could barely imagine. We found the Galactic Concord, which promised peace and prosperity to all who joined. She paused. We believed them. We followed their rules. We smiled when they insulted us. We bowed when they pushed us aside. We told ourselves that patience would earn us respect, that humility would earn us friendship. Her voice grew harder. 80 million of our people are dead because we believed those lies. The chamber remained silent, but the silence had changed. It was no longer the silence of grief. It was the silence of something waking up. The Concord does not want our friendship, Yoon continued. The Velthari do not want our cooperation. They want our submission. They want us to accept that human lives are worth less than alien convenience. She looked directly into the cameras that broadcast her words to every human world. I will not accept that. I cannot accept that. And I am asking you, all of you, to stand with me. She took a deep breath. No more patience. No more humility. No more hoping that the galaxy will treat us with basic decency if we just wait long enough. Her voice rose. They have shown us who they are. Now we will show them who we are. The assembly rose to its feet. The applause began slowly, then built into a roar that shook the walls. On Mars, General Li Jia watched the speech and smiled grimly. In orbit above Earth, Admiral Park Do-yeon began transmitting orders to ships that officially did not exist, on a freighter racing back from the outer colonies. Captain Choi Yoonji cleaned her weapons and thought about her niece, who would never turn 8. The quiet century was over. The galaxy just did not know it yet. The galaxy waited for humanity to attack. They expected angry fleets charging toward Velthari space. They expected desperate strikes against military targets. They expected the wild rage of a wounded animal. Instead, they got silence. For 90 days, no human ship left port. No human diplomat attended meetings. No human merchant conducted trade. The 12 human worlds went dark, their communications reduced to the minimum required by Concord law. They are grieving, the Velthari ambassador reported to his government. Their spirit is broken. By the time their deadline arrives, they will relocate without resistance. The Galari Intelligence Service reached a similar conclusion. Humans are a young species. They lack the emotional strength for prolonged conflict. Their silence indicates acceptance of their situation. The Concord speaker announced that the human situation was resolving itself naturally. No further action was required. They were all wrong. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Admiral Park Do-hyun stood in a room that did not appear on any official map. Around him, hundreds of officers worked at computer stations, coordinating operations across 400 light years. Status report, Park said. Commander Yoon Tae-young, his chief of staff, pulled up a holographic display. Assembly of the first fleet is 70% complete. The stealth ships are in position at all primary targets. Intelligence confirms that enemy patrol schedules remain unchanged. Park nodded. And the weapon systems? Fully operational, Admiral. The gravity bombs tested successfully in deep space. The neural viruses have been updated with the latest Velthari security codes. Tae-hyung paused. We are ready, sir. Park looked at the map of the galaxy floating before him. Red dots marked human positions. Blue dots marked enemy targets. There were far more blue dots than red. Not yet, he said. We have 91 more days of silence. Use them. Across the solar system, General Li Jie was conducting final training exercises. 2 million soldiers had been preparing for this moment for decades. Now they practiced. the specific operations they would carry out when the order came. Remember, Lee told her commanders, we will not fight like the galaxy expects. We will not form lines and exchange fire like honorable warriors. We will strike from shadows. We will attack without warning. We will use every trick and tool available to us. Some will call us cowards, one commander observed. Let them, Lee replied. The dead do not care what their killers are called, and we intend to create many dead. Intelligence Director Han Soyan worked from a small office on Earth, surrounded by screens showing data streams from across the galaxy. For 30 years, she had built the largest spy network in human history. Thousands of agents operated on alien worlds, most of them appearing to be ordinary workers, merchants, or diplomats. Now that network was paying off. We have the command. Codes for 6 Concord battle stations, Soyang reported to President Yoon. We know the personal secrets of every major Veltari military commander. We have the exact locations of their home fleet. How is this possible? The president asked. The Concord has monitored us constantly for a century. Soyang smiled slightly. They monitored what they expected to find. They looked for military transmissions and found merchant signals. They searched for weapons research and found agricultural studies. They never imagined that our greatest weapon was patience. President Yoon nodded slowly. How long until we are ready? 91 days, Madam President. Then we will be prepared to fight the war they never saw coming. Captain Choi Yoonji spent those 91 days doing something unusual for a ship captain. She stayed on the ground. Her freighter had been secretly converted into a mobile command center, equipped with weapons and sensors that would have seemed impossible to the aliens who had inspected it dozens of times. Now Yoonji trained with the elite unit that would crew the vessel during the coming conflict. Your mission is the Veltari homeworld, Admiral Park told her during a secure briefing. You will coordinate the assault on their capital city. Yoonji thought about her niece. She thought about the birthday decorations that had been hanging in her brother's living room when the sky turned red. Understood, Admiral. Captain. Park's voice softened slightly. This will not bring them back. No, Yoonji agreed. But it will make sure no other human family experiences what mine experienced. That is enough. As the days passed, the galaxy grew comfortable with human silence. Veltari settlers began moving into the outer edges of human space, confident that the relocation was already underway. Concord officials discussed how to divide human assets among member species. On the 90th day, Ambassador Kim Yuna made her final appearance before the Galactic Concord. She had aged terribly since the massacre. Her hair had turned white. Her face was lined with exhaustion and grief. The human delegation requests one final extension, she said in a weak voice. Our people need more time to process our losses. The Concord speaker shook his head. Ambassador Kim, the deadline was set by lawful authority. It cannot be changed. Please, Yuna said. We are asking for mercy. Around the chamber, alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some felt genuine pity for the broken woman before them. Others simply wanted the unpleasant business finished. The request is denied, the speaker announced. Humanity will comply with the relocation order or face consequences. Yuna bowed her head. I understand, she whispered. I will inform my government. She left the chamber slowly, leaning on her assistant for support. Behind her, the Concord resumed its normal business, already forgetting about the human delegation. They did not see Yuna straighten up the moment she left the room. They did not see the cold fire that burned in her eyes. They did not see her pull out a communicator and speak 3 simple words. It is time. On the 91st day, President Yoon Se-jin appeared on every screen in the galaxy. Behind her stood Admiral Park, General Lee, and every senior leader of the human government. To the Galactic Concord and all its member species. Yoon began. Humanity has a message. She paused. For 100 years, we asked for nothing but the chance to exist in peace. You gave us insults. We asked for fair treatment under laws that you created. You gave us exploitation. We asked for basic dignity after you murdered 18 million of our people. You gave us deadlines. Her voice hardened. So now we are done asking. She leaned forward. As of this moment, the United Earth Government declares war on the Galactic Concord and all species who stand with it. This is not a request for negotiation. This is not a gesture of protest. This is a promise. Around the galaxy, alarms began to sound. Human ships were appearing from nowhere, emerging from hiding places that no one had known existed. Human soldiers were striking targets that had been thought secure. Human weapons were doing things that human technology should not have been capable of doing. President Yoon smiled. And for the first time, the galaxy saw the truth behind a century of human patience. You spent 100 years teaching us that the galaxy respects only strength. You spent 100 years showing us that mercy is for the weak. You spent 100 years believing that we were learning to be good servants. She shook her head. We were learning how to destroy you. The transmission ended. The war had begun. Commander Rothax of the Veltari Defense Force was drinking tea when his station exploded. One moment, he was reviewing patrol reports and remembering that funny human admiral who had always been so humble. The next moment, alarms were screaming. The walls were cracking open, and something was tearing his ship apart from the inside. What is happening? He roared at his crew. Unknown vessels, Commander. They appeared inside our defensive perimeter. They are firing weapons we have never seen. Rothax stared at his tactical display. It made no sense. Human ships did not have stealth technology. Human weapons did not bend gravity. Human tactics did not include appearing from nowhere and striking without warning, but human ships were doing all of those things. Return fire, Rothax commanded. We cannot, Commander. Our targeting systems are not responding. Something has infected our computers. The last thing Rothax saw was a small human vessel passing directly in front of his bridge viewport. For a brief moment, he locked eyes with the human. Captain at the controls. She was smiling. Then his world turned to fire. The first wave of attacks struck 73 military installations across 400 light years. Human stealth ships emerged from hiding places inside enemy territory, positions they had reached over months of careful, invisible travel. They deployed weapons that the galaxy had never imagined. Gravity bombs. Collapsed space stations into dense spheres of crushed metal. Noroviruses turned automated defense systems against their operators. Hyperspace disruptors stranded entire fleets in the empty void between stars. Unable to move or communicate. In the first hour, the Veltari Dominion lost 40% of its military capacity. In the second hour, they lost another 30%. By the third hour, they had stopped counting. Admiral Park Do-hyun commanded the assault from the bridge of the Yu's Reckoning, a dreadnought that had been built in secret over 20 years. The ship was 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that officially did not exist. Crewed by officers who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, the Veltari home fleet is attempting to regroup at their 4th moon. Park studied the display. The enemy ships were gathering in a defensive formation, preparing to make a stand against the human assault. It was exactly what he had expected them to do. Send the coordinates to Captain Choi, he ordered. Tell her the path is clear. On the other side of the Veltari system, Captain Choi Yoonji received the message. Her converted freighter now led a fleet of 100 human vessels, all disguised as civilian ships until the moment they revealed their true nature. All units, Yoonji broadcast, begin final approach to the homeworld. weapons free. Her ships accelerated toward the Velthari capital planet. Below them, billions of aliens looked up at the sky and saw death approaching. The Velthari Planetary Defense Commander broadcast an emergency message. Human vessels, you are entering protected space. Any attack on civilian targets will be considered a war crime. Yunji opened a response channel. 18 million humans were civilians. You did not seem concerned about war crimes then. She closed the channel and gave the order to fire. The assault on the Velthari homeworld was precise and devastating. Human forces did not bombard cities randomly, as the Velthari had done to New Seoul. Instead, they struck military targets, government buildings, and communication centers with surgical accuracy. But they did strike. General Lee Jie led the ground assault personally. Her special forces teams dropped from orbit in small pods, landing in the heart of the Velthari capital before enemy troops could respond. Remember your training, she told her soldiers as they moved through burning streets. Speed and violence. Give them no time to think, no time to organize, no time to hope. A Velthari squad appeared around a corner, weapons raised. Lee's team cut them down in seconds. General, one of her officers reported, "We have located the enemy command center. Then let us pay them a visit." The Velthari High Command had retreated to a bunker deep beneath their capital city. They believed they were safe. They believed that no enemy can reach them through layers of rock and metal and defensive systems. They were wrong. General Lee stood outside the bunker door, which her engineers had just blown open. Inside, she could see a dozen Velthari leaders huddled around a table, their scales pale with fear. "You have lost," Lee said simply. "Surrender your forces, and this ends." The Velthari Supreme Commander stepped forward. "You cannot do this. The Concord will respond. They will crush you." Lee laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. "The Concord is busy," she said. "We are not only attacking you." Across the galaxy, the same scene played out on 100 worlds. Human forces struck Concord military installations, communication networks, and government centers. They did not try to conquer territory. They did not try to hold ground. They simply appeared, destroyed everything of military value, and vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Ambassador Kim Yuna, no longer pretending to be weak and broken, walked through the halls of the Concord Assembly as human marines secured every entrance. The alien representatives who had ignored her pleas now stared at her with terror. "Ambassador Kim?" the Concord speaker said, his voice trembling. "This is madness. You cannot fight the entire galaxy." Yuna smiled. "We are not fighting the entire galaxy. We are simply teaching it a lesson." "What lesson?" "That humanity is not furniture to be moved. That our lives are not worth less than alien convenience. That when you push us, we push back." She turned to address the assembled representatives. "The war ends when you acknowledge what was done to us. The war ends when you punish those responsible. The war ends when you accept that humanity will never again ask permission to exist." Intelligence Director Han Soyao monitored the conflict from her command center on Earth. Her screen showed the status of human operations across the galaxy. Green lights everywhere. "Director," one of her analysts reported, "the Kalari are requesting negotiations. The Marathi have withdrawn from combat. The Zendi are offering unconditional surrender. And the Velthari? Their government has collapsed. Their military is destroyed. They are no longer capable of organized resistance." Soyow nodded. Informed the president. The war was 72 hours old. The Velthari Dominion, which had murdered 18 million humans and expected no consequences, had ceased to exist as a functional civilization. 6 other Concord species had already sued for peace. President Yoon Seo-jin received the news with no celebration. There was no joy in what they had done. There was only the grim satisfaction of justice. Delivered. The Concorde is requesting negotiations, her aide informed. Her Yoon looked out her window at the stars. Tell them we will negotiate when we are finished. Finished with what, Madam President? Yoon thought about New Seoul. She thought about 18 million lives erased in 6 hours. She thought about a century of patience that had earned humanity nothing but contempt. Finished making sure this never happens again. The galaxy continued to burn. And humanity, which had spent 100 years learning how to smile through humiliation, learned something new. They learned that they were very, very good at war. When it ended, the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Concorde, which had ruled for thousands of years, existed only in history books. The Velthari Dominion, which had murdered 18 million humans and expected gratitude, was a burned-out ruin. 17 species had surrendered unconditionally. 43 others had signed treaties that guaranteed they would never threaten humanity again. Admiral Park Do-yoon stood on the observation deck of his flagship, watching reconstruction crews repair a damaged space station. His hair had turned completely white during the war. His face was lined with exhaustion, but his eyes still held the same cold fire that had burned in them since the day his daughter died. Admiral, his aide said, the President has summoned you to Earth. The final treaty is ready for signing. Park nodded slowly. I will leave within the hour, sir. The aide hesitated. How do you feel? After everything we have done? Park considered the question for a long moment. I feel tired, he said finally. I feel old. And I feel like I want to plant a garden somewhere far from here and try to remember what peace felt like. He paused. But mostly, I feel like we did what was necessary. No more, no less. The Treaty of Seoul was signed on Earth, in a building that had been constructed on the exact spot where humanity had first received the Concorde's relocation order. The location was deliberate. The message was clear. President Yoon Seo-jin sat at the head of a long table, surrounded by human officials and alien ambassadors. The representatives of 37 species had come to sign the document that would establish the new galactic order. The Kalari ambassador was the first to speak after the signing. President Yoon, he said, his voice careful and respectful, I must ask something that has troubled me since the war began. Ask. You deceived us. For 100 years you pretended to be weak. You built weapons in secret. You trained armies in hiding. You gathered intelligence while smiling in our faces. The ambassador spread his hands. Why? You could have established yourselves as a major power from the beginning. You could have demanded respect instead of earning contempt. Yoon leaned back in her chair. She thought about all the years of patience, all the insults swallowed, all the bows and smiles that had hidden humanity's true nature. We hoped we would not have to, she said. We hoped the galaxy would be better than it was. We hoped that if we showed good faith, we would receive good faith in return. She shook her head. We were wrong. We paid for that hope with 18 million lives. The ambassador nodded slowly. And now? What happens to the galaxy under human leadership? We do not want to lead the galaxy, Yoon replied. We want to be left alone to live as we choose. We want to explore and grow and build without asking permission. We want to never again fear that our children will be murdered because a more powerful species finds us inconvenient. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at a garden that had been planted in memory of New Seoul's victims. The old Concorde believed that strength gave the right to rule, that the powerful could do whatever they wished to the weak. We have proven that we are strong. We could impose that same system with humanity at the top instead of the bottom. She turned back to face the ambassadors. We choose not to, not because we are weak, but because we remember what it felt like to be weak. We remember the fear and the helplessness and the rage of being treated as less than nothing. Her voice hardened. But let me be clear. If any species threatens humanity again, if anyone attempts what the Valkyrie attempted, they will discover that our mercy has limits. We will not spend another century hoping for better treatment. We will respond immediately and without restraint. General Li Jie stood at the back of the room, watching the ceremony. She had won every battle of the war, but victory had cost her something she could not name. Her soldiers had followed her orders without question, and thousands of them had died. Thousands more would carry scars for the rest of their lives. After the treaty was signed, she found Admiral Park on a balcony overlooking the city. "What now, Admiral?" she asked. Park was watching the sunset. "I am retiring. I have a small house on Mars. I am going to plant vegetables and read books and try to remember my daughter's smile without seeing fire. Will it work? Probably not." Park finally looked at her. "But I will try. That is all any of us can do." Captain Choi Yoonji did not attend the treaty signing. She was already far from Earth, commanding humanity's first true exploration fleet. Her mission was to search for something beyond conquest, beyond war, beyond the ugly necessities that had shaped the past 14 months. "Captain," her first officer said, "long-range sensors have detected an unusual energy signature in the next system. It does not match any known technology." Yoonji smiled. It was a genuine smile, something she had not felt capable of for a long time. "Set a course," she said. "Let us see what the universe has to offer." The galaxy had spent a century underestimating humanity. They had looked at human ships and seen weakness. They had looked at human diplomats and seen fear. They had looked at human patience and seen submission. They had never considered that patience could be a weapon. They had never imagined that a century of humiliation had been carefully, deliberately chosen. They had never understood that the quiet, smiling humans in the back of every conference room were not learning to be servants. They were learning how to win. Ambassador Kim Yuna spent her final years teaching at a university on Earth. Her students came from every human world. Young people who had grown up during the war and wanted to understand how it had happened. "The greatest lesson of our conflict," she told them, "is that deception is not the same as dishonesty. We did not lie about who we were. We simply did not tell the whole truth. Is that ethical?" A student asked. Yuna considered the question. Perhaps not. But neither was murdering 18 million civilians because they stood in the way of alien expansion. Sometimes survival requires choices that keep us awake at night. President Yoon Seo-jin served 2 more terms before retiring to a quiet life of writing and reflection. Her memoirs became required reading in schools across human space, a testament to the hard decisions that had shaped humanity's place in the galaxy. In the final chapter, she wrote, "They asked us to be peaceful. We were. They asked us to be patient. We were. They asked us to die quietly. We refused. In the end, that refusal is what defines us. Not our technology or our tactics or our weapons. Simply our absolute unwillingness to accept extinction as the price of galactic membership." The galaxy learned to live with human power. Some species resented it. Others feared it. A few, eventually, came to respect it. Trade resumed. Diplomacy continued. The wounds of war slowly healed, though they never fully disappeared. And throughout human space, in schools and homes and government buildings, a simple phrase was carved into walls and printed on documents and spoken at ceremonies. Never again. 2 words that summarized everything humanity had learned in its first 2 centuries among the stars. 2 words that promised the galaxy exactly what it could expect if it ever forgot the lesson of new. So, 2 words that made sure no human, child would ever again look up at an alien sky and see death falling toward them. The moment humanity declared war, the galaxy realized it was already too late. But what they did not understand, what they could not understand, was that humanity had never wanted war at all. They had simply wanted to survive. And in the end, they had proven themselves very good at it.